Hey, g'day guys, it's Calvin, Cartoon Company in New Zealand. I'm playing with Link G4X's again. This time a man's contacted me. He wants his ECU set up for his G4X monsoon. Yeah, I'm sure it's a monsoon. I have to go over. I do a lot of these. I do lots of setups. You see, when I sell a loom, I prefer to do it, and from now on I'm going to do my very best to ensure that I have the ECU here on the loom and I run it on the engine. There's a lot of guys that are building these looms that aren't test running them. They're getting it to customers and they're not right, and then they've got to go through and there's a bit of a blame game. With mine, because I know they run on the engine and they run properly, I know that it's at the other end. It's an install problem if there's an issue in just about every case. Or mechanical faults. I've got old Yellow in the workshop. If you've seen me working and wiring, we run on old Yellow. We've got the Gen 2 engine, Joey. At some point we'll have red tappet covers painted up. So I know that they're right. But moving on, we're going to get this ECU set up for a man. So we're going to get straight into it. G4X, new software. I really like this new software. The more I use it, the more I like it. Did take me a little while to get used to it, and I saw lots of guys complaining. We're not going back to it, so we've got to embrace the change and move on. And now that I've used it a bit more, loving it, really liking that. And lots of neat features that have come up in the G4X. They just get better and better the more I work with them. So let's get into this. I've got an email to go through. I'm going to put some numbers in, send them a file, make this thing work. So we're going to open up the G4X program. Brings it up. Takes just a moment to open up here. And I'm going to use a file that I've used before. So I've got a set of tuning maps, and I'm going to find Brad's one. Brad's was one we've had running in the workshop on a set of base numbers. We're going to look at here, and we'll use the configuration screen when we're working on it. But before we do that, I'm going to save a copy, because I don't want to overwrite these changes onto Brad's file, because I want to keep Brad's file for if I need to work on that or deal with anything on Brad's. So I'm just going to top in here. We're going to pop in Connor's monsoon. Might spell that correctly, shall we? And it's got standard ignition. I'm sure it's got distributors and leads. So we pop that in there and we save a copy of that file before we continue. So over to the configuration screen. And that also has the help file included in there. So that allows us to check stuff much easier, much quicker. I'm actually in the trigger screen, but we're going to move up to start the process of what's going on here. Here you go. And this isn't a loom that I made myself. It's for someone else's. We're just going to type in the description so I know which one it is if I ever go into this file. Made by someone else, and they do things a little bit different to what I might do it. I've got an email, and there's his outputs right there. And yeah, you're doing a Cressida, so it's an 87 Cressida over in California. So I want to put as much information into this. I could put a full description if I wanted, but in the vehicle identification, I generally put the customer's name. Can't put 87, that it's an 87 Cressida. Check my firing order, standard 1UZ firing order, so that's nice and easy. Moving on, we can and we just right click on the side of the little arrow. That makes it go up and come back into the fuel menu. Checking the fuel setup. So the fuel setup again is some numbers that I've used in the past. I prefer to use modeled, and this one is set up because it's a monsoon on semi-sequential. I've done another video on semi-sequential somewhere in here. There it is. It's 1UZFE injector grouping for Link ECU semi-sequential for best results on 1UZ 4-cylinder 4-injector output ECU. It's a bit of a mouthful for a title, but I'm trying to be descriptive here. And you'll see that they're grouped. Injector 1 to 1 and 7, injector 2 to 2 and 8, injector 3 to 3 and 5, and injector 4 to 4 and 6. That is listed in the help file. So if you need to find it, you need to check it, go look in the help file. It's also how 1UZs are wired from factory. Okay, so don't be scared to grab and have a look in that help file. Go through it, and check it, read it. We can always be learning, and hey, you can't remember every single thing out there on every single topic. So that's why we have help files, and it's certainly not shameful to ask and check out and see what's going on. I find it great just to reinforce what I've been doing, and it saves me having to write it all down on paper because it's in the help file. So these are a set of numbers I've used before. I use them a lot. I use it on modelled fueling. Maybe easier for some people to use traditional fueling, but I'm quite happy with these numbers. It's a set of numbers I've been using for quite a while. They were a carryover from the G4 Plus days. And yeah, as I said, I have run this file on a vehicle in the workshop. If you're doing injectors, there's injector setup down in here. All those numbers are entered, and the injector test is done through this section as well. So, right, with the cold start and the air temps and all those bits and pieces and the Lambda targets, there are a set of numbers that are nice and safe. They're my starting set of numbers for most of my setups. Connor is paying for this video. He's paying for my time to set up his ECU. Everyone can watch it, but there's some stuff in there and some of the numbers that you're not going to see because they're for my customers. And I hope everyone understands that. I've got my inlet air temp in there, and I've also got a dual fuel table, and that allows me to tune one map while leaving a known running map in place, and I can then toggle between the two. Generally, they are switched on a virtual auxiliary, and I do the same with ignition often as well. So I'm reasonably happy with the numbers that are in there. Yeah, there's my dual fuel on that virtual auxiliary. So you just switch it within the program when you're tuning it. You can put it on a digital switch outside, but I find on virtuals just fine. Right, checking my closed loop Lambda. Again, a set of numbers that are quite safe. Brad's had a twin wideband in it, so I was using Lambda average. He had a left hand and a right hand can Lambdas. And yeah, there were some issues in the past, and Brad's trying to make sure he gets everything in there. That's why I put a lot into his one. But I'll just swap this one back for Connor to Lambda 1. It's moving along a little bit. Just double check everything there. Yep, I'm happy with all those. And we'll just overrun. Have I got it on? Yeah, I hope it's on. Doing this also with other ones and doing other setups, it allows me to check that what I've sent out is correct and that I'm happy with it. There's a process when we're setting these ECUs up, and it's not something that you just go and bang, done. There's often a checking process, going over what you've done to know that you've got everything right, monitoring it and checking your logging. It's what I do with race teams, and I apply the same principle when I'm setting up road cars. Going down to the ignition, we just right click there. Oh, Brad's was on a twin distributor. I do so many that I sometimes forget which ones I'm doing and where I'm going. So those numbers are all going to be pretty close. And again, I've got a dual ignition tables. Right, have I got some engine protection in there? I should only have an RPM limit. It wasn't boosted and quite conservative in my numbers. and you will notice that at the top end rev cuts come in. So for extra safety, if it does get over hot, there will be a rev limit. I would also have a warning light on mine, which you'll see just soon as we come up and we do the auxiliary outputs. So with the G4X, one thing that I really like is the way they've changed so you can view all the output pins very quickly. So we click on output pins, and right there, look at that. Everything's in there, really simple. You can see it fast as. And I've got a lot listed in there. We've got our injectors, we've got our ignition. And if we pop over to what Connor's given me for a list of inputs and outputs, injectors, there's not a whole lot by comparison. We've got a couple of igniters, showing that it is standard leads. We've already discussed that anyway. One auxiliary output, idle speed. No, it's not idle speed, sorry. It's the circuit opening relay, which is a output for a fuel pump. What analog input for a TPS. So there's not a whole lot. It's quite different to the way that I do them. And of course, price reflects that as well. But I like to use as much of the ECU as I can. So we've got the injector outputs there. That's good. We've got the two ignitions. And then we've got an engine fan and a check engine light. So we're just going to turn these off. And we can turn them off here, but we can't turn them back on in this section. And that confuses some people. So they've struggled to find where to turn them on. But if you're working on them for something like this, where I'm converting a tune over, or I think the link support, they can find it much easier because they can look at what's where on the ECU. From that point of view, I really like the G4X. So you can see straight away I've turned it off, and I'm going to go through and remove all these ones, which you can see I've got a lot. I've got an overheat light, I've got an oil light from the ECU because I've got an oil pressure sensor going in. I've got a speedo. I'm using the link as my speedo correction for the dash. Brad's is actually looking at getting an aftermarket dash too now, so he's got an MXG AIM dash, which is pretty cool. So having all this information going in is going to make it much better, and it will mean that things like the oil light and the speedo out will be defunct because it'll go out over the CAN bus. As you see, I'm just very quickly clicking through, just turning the outputs off, modifying the other tune to suit Connor's setup. You see fuel pumps on auxiliary 3, but we need to change it to number 1. So we can turn it off in this section, and we have to turn it back on in a different section. Taco output, that goes. Again, very quickly, turn that off. And idle speed. Now, I like idle speed. Pretty much every vehicle I do an idle speed, but this one doesn't have it, so it's going to be another set of problems for Connor to overcome. So that's everything turned off. You can see very quickly it's turned off. We go up to fuel pump control and we tune it on to auxiliary 1. And this is not auxiliary 2, just number 1. Yep, there we go. And it's a low output, primes for 2 seconds, simple. And this is where you can test it as well, so you can test each section very quickly. And from that point of view, again, I really like this software. So when you're setting it up, if you've got the key on and the vehicle and the engine connected, you can just go through and test each circuit as you're switching them over. Right, what else we got? The injector's done. There it is, AN volt. And a couple of temps on the AN temps. I'm back over to the tune. I've got a few up happening there. We probably got to check I'm on the right one. Right, let's find it. I was going to do digital inputs. We'll just get rid of these. We'll just click them back. Give us some more room. Into the digital inputs. But there's a little bit of an issue there because of the knock sensor inputs. I'm a little unsure quite what to do. So I'm going to move on to analog inputs at this point. My engine coolant is on analog temp 1, same as Connor's, so that's just fine. And I've used a Bosch NTC. Now, I've got a little problem. I'm not sure if Connor's used a Bosch NTC. I'm going to have to go through the email and just double check on that. But even with it being Bosch NTC, it's a pretty universal type setup. If it gives different temperatures, then that will need to be adjusted, or if it's got a different sensor. Standard Toyota works on Bosch NTC as well. And you can check when he fires it up that these temperatures here are close to where they should be. If they're way out, then there's a problem. This one, you see there's 4 degrees. I'm not actually connected at the moment to an ECU, but 4 degrees isn't too bad. And hey, you'll often find the big block of metal will be different to the air temp anyway. I've also got, so that's got the internal pull-up turned on. We'll go over to the IAT, same deal. I've got it as a Bosch NTC, and it may have something different in it. So Connor will check that and confirm it needs to be changed. Of course, he'll be watching this video. He knows how to change it. It's not going to be any stress for him at all. Now, throttle position sensor. So check those input pins. As you can see again, I've got a heap of analog inputs. I've got oil temperature. I've added an extra external pull-up at a voltage 1 to use that as a temp input. I've got oil pressure. My TPS is on number 3, which is where I always put it. And I've got fuel pressure. So I've got a heap in there. And it's different, again, let's just say it's different to the way other people might do it. I'm trying to use every output I can, or every input that I can, to give as much information as we can. Same principle I use on the sprint boats. But I'm just going to go through at the moment and just turn them off. So I turn them off there. And it's pretty easy to do with this new setup. Again, as I said, one thing I really like about it, it's quick to set up when you're changing stuff like this and to see where things are at. So I'm going to have to move, again, I turn it off in this section, push the right buttons, turn it off in this section, and I turn it back on somewhere else. Get rid of that. Okay, we're good there. So they're gone. And now we head up to, we're going to head up to throttle position sensor. Now they're all turned off. I was just checking they're off. And on analog volt 1. Great thing about this software, you can calibrate your TPS right here as well. That's so handy. You just click on there. I'm not connected to a computer, so it's going to tell me that I'm not connected to a computer. But you can calibrate it there, or you can also calibrate it like the older ECUs under ECU controls. So you pop down, TPS setup, follow the instructions, really simple. And that's really cool. And also your map sensor calibration. Even though it's internal, you do want to calibrate it just to confirm everything is working like it should. So again, I can quickly check it. Analog inputs are done, and moving on to the triggers. Now this is on a trigger, a standard 1UZ default settings, and they've made some changes when they've come into the X's. So they've rounded them off so the offset's 0 for the standard settings. When you're setting it, you still should check your base timing. This of course is for a 12-tooth crank wheel. If you've done other stuff, then it's going to be different. If you're running coil on plug, it's going to be different. There's the trick on them, and I've done other videos on coil on plugs and the trigger offsets for the timing. It should fire up with those numbers, hopefully. This is of course 2 for the number 1 cam sensor, the left hand, same side as the crank sensor. It's going down here. You'll see there's a coolant, temps, igniters, yes, leads, so that's all good. But we've got these knock sensors. Now this gives me a little bit of a problem, because I believe that they don't. I'm going to need to check myself. So if I just go over here and I'll go to wiring. Somewhere in there there's wiring instructions, information. So I pin out for the monsoon, and you'll see it's got a note, version 3 or newer, G4X, monsoon ECUs, support knock control, which is fed into the ECU through pin 6, shared with DI4. So that's this one at the top here. So he's got 2 knock sensors going into DI1 and DI2. I'm not certain about that, and I'm okay with not being certain. I'm going to ring the guys at Link, have a chat. It's Sunday here. They'll be on a break, so I'm going to give them give them some space. Hey, it's my choice to work today, but I'm not going to force anyone else to. So I'm just going to afford that respect to the boys at Link, and they do a fantastic job. I had another job, again I was working late. They do work late in the evenings during the week, and they were dialing in, they were helping me out, discussing things late at night, and even a couple of days later, ringing me back to check. So I can't give enough credit to the guys at Link. Hey, like anything, they may not always be correct, but they always give you ideas and have a good chat and just spitball some ideas at me when I'm doing stuff, because I'm often doing stuff that isn't quite normal, as you'll see with the Bentley. So hey, a great big thanks to the support from Link ECU, because they are a great team. Right, moving on back to where we were. Okay, so if we go into the digital inputs, I need to turn my digital inputs off because I've got speed going in, and I've got a start position, and I've got an idle switch. So I probably should turn that stuff off because it's not using them on this particular tune. So just, again, really quick to turn off. Start position. Now, I would like to see start position into this ECU. Okay, and I do it because it improves the fueling on startup. At this point, I am just going to turn it off. It's got different pins going to number 2 anyway, and I'll turn the idle switch, which is in the TPS. It's there. I use up the pin, stop a wire hanging out, so we get rid of that. And the reason I use the start is if you go down here to I think it's cold start, not fuel corrections, cold start, pre-start prime. There it is, and it's with ignition start position. So it bangs a little bit extra fuel on when you fire some fueling, when you fire the key on, the start on. So that makes quite a difference. Okay. I prefer to leave it on. I'm going to leave it there, so if it ever does get a start position fed in, that it is there for us. And it does improve starting. Yeah. Well, let's just say again, we do things different, and I like to do it like the way the factories do it, with a start input to the ECU. Improves that starting. I feel it improves the starting. Okay, so we've got DI4, going to knock control, knock setup, and we can change our settings for there, do ignition trims, and set up all the knock. This is, again, as I said, it's a topic that I'm going to have to talk and get a bit of backup from the guys at Link, because unless there's an external box, I'm not sure about it. On the other ECUs, they've got specific knock pins, so on the likes of your Storm upwards, and they've just brought this in on the Monsoon with the G4X. So up until this point, they didn't have knock control. I just got to find, I'm just having a bit of a look here, and I think I'm just probably best just to turn it off. To go back there, we're just going to turn this off, knock mode off, job done, got rid of that. It's not going to affect starting, so it can be started and run, and we can work on that little issue later on. Right, of course, we're going to save a file. I would do save as, but I can just save it straight over top because this is specifically for Connor. The other thing I want to do is, before it goes out, I want to set up logging, because to me logging is very important. So we're going to turn that logging on. Just check the PC logging. That's all fine there, and it's on the highest frequency at this point in time. And then we go into ECU logging, and we want to turn that on, bang some numbers in. I just want to have it always on, so even if it's idling or key on. Unfortunately, it's only got the small set of default numbers, so I'm going to want to go through and I'm going to put in a big set of numbers on it. and a lot more data to get in there. I feel that it's better to have it. I feel it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. There we have all the numbers. Well, I like that. Heap of numbers, all in there. We're going to OK, and then we're going to save that again. So we'll just click that and we will save that to the file. Beauty. Right. That setup's pretty well done and dusted. Ready to head off to the man. G'day guys, it's Kick. Hey, I thought I'd just do a quick update, chucked a little bit extra in here. I had a chat with Simon down at Link with regard to that digital inputs and knock control. He confirmed that the version 3 onwards does have knock input on digital input 4 where it shares it. So number 1 and 2 aren't going to work digital inputs unless it's got additional boxes or something. I haven't looked into that. So that's something, again, just letting you know, monsoons, G4X, they do have knock control, but it's only on digital input 4. It's the same pin. Make sure you turn digital input 4 off for any other function to make sure that's working correctly. So Connor's now going to get a copy of what I've set up and of course the video. He'll watch the video, go through the proper Link setup process. He will calibrate his map sensor. He'll calibrate his TPS. He'll check his temperature sensors are reading correctly. He'll confirm that when he cranks it, it does bring up a trigger. If it doesn't fire, he will confirm his trigger settings, and I think they should be pretty close on the default settings, unless he's put different wheels, gone to the VVTi wheel or anything like that. When it fires, it should start and run, hopefully. There's no idle speed control on his one. It's not listed in those outputs. So if he doesn't have that, he will need to go through and adjust the base idle to make it idle and get it up to temperature and set that base idle. I always use idle speed control units, so again, setting up someone else's work, sometimes we find things that are done differently. That's probably the best way for me to say it. But that's all me for now. Good luck with that, Connor. I'm sure you're going to let me know how things go. There's a logs turned on, so we can check out the logging. You can see the log files, and we can check stuff and monitor it as we go along. Hope that's been helpful. Talk to you again soon. Catch you later.